is the OnePlus Nord 2. And after pretty much rave reviews all around for last year's first Nord device, I was super intrigued to see how OnePlus would up the ante with version 2. But as always, I wanted to let the dust settle just a bit. And so 2 months after the release of the Nord 2, I'm finally bringing you my full review. So let's chat about it. Now, after using both the OnePlus 9 Pro and the regular OnePlus 9 for a good while this year, it was definitely an interesting experience switching to their budget phone last. It really did give me an insight into what sacrifices you notice coming from those flagship phones, but also the various features that feel almost identical. And so the first aspect that feels very much the same is the design. We've got glass on the back and on the front. The buttons are very clicky and tactile. That alert slider feels just as tight as the more premium phones. And we also have that single hole punch for the selfie camera sitting at the top left of the display. The design of the camera module has now been updated to match the rest of the lineup as well. And I've got to say, in the hand, it honestly feels pretty much identical to the really premium feeling OnePlus 9. The only real difference is that the chin is slightly bigger on the Nord 2 in comparison to the OnePlus 9, but the other bezels are all very slim, and I quickly forgot about the chin after an hour or two of using the phone. Now, on the other hand, where the OnePlus 9 and 9 Pro have 120Hz displays, the Nord 2 only has a 90Hz panel. But I use the word only fairly liberally here because 90Hz is still very nice to have. And in fact, I didn't really notice the switch when I first started using this phone. I did, however, notice the slightly slower refresh rate display after prolonged use when I, for one reason or another, needed to temporarily use a phone with a 120Hz panel. But again, if you're like most people and this phone will be the one and only phone you're using, then you're gonna really enjoy this display. Then back to similarities with the more premium phones, and what's really impressive is that both the haptics and the in-display fingerprint sensors from the more expensive phones feel pretty much identical on this phone. Coming from using the ZTE Axon 30, which has just about the worst haptics you can find on any modern phone, and it was truly a joy to experience the really tight, clicky haptics on the Nord 2. The fingerprint sensor is also pretty fast, although it's still positioned slightly too low on the display for my liking. And for some reason, OnePlus also makes it virtually impossible to register the same fingerprint twice for improved speed and accuracy, which is definitely a bit annoying. Now, in terms of battery life, this was one area that I thought was fairly weak with both the OnePlus 9 and 9 Pro, but with the Nord 2, I've actually experienced pretty impressive battery life. Most days I'm ending with anywhere between 50 to 60% of battery left, and with light use, I honestly reckon I could push this phone to 2 full days of use. With the OnePlus 9 and 9 Pro, I would never risk not charging them overnight, so this is a point to the Nord 2 over those more expensive phones. A large part of this improved battery performance is thanks to that slightly slower refresh rate display, but also no doubt thanks to the less beefier specs inside. So where the OnePlus 9 and 9 Pro house top-of-the-line Snapdragon 888 chipsets inside, the Nord 2 instead utilizes a MediaTek chipset, the Dimensity 1200 AI to be precise. Now, a few years back, anytime a device utilized a MediaTek chipset, I could immediately tell that the performance was lackluster in comparison to phones using Snapdragon chipsets. But MediaTek chipsets have obviously come a long way in the last few years because I've been pretty satisfied with the performance of this phone. Now, is it flagship level performance? Absolutely not. In fact, I would probably say that performance is basically the one key area that differentiates this phone from its more premium counterparts. But then again, those more expensive devices are just about some of the fastest phones you can find right now, so it's a pretty tough comparison. Look, by and large, this phone performs pretty well, and more importantly, very reliably. There have been no major hiccups with the software side of things, and so again, coming from the Axon 30, which was having issues with RAM management and not sending text messages sometimes, it's been nice to have a phone that just works. But then the last piece of the puzzle is the camera experience. And like a lot of phones I've reviewed this year, the main camera on this phone is actually pretty decent. As long as you give it plenty of light, it can capture detailed images with pretty solid dynamic range. And for the most part, I've enjoyed my experience with it. Now again, like most budget phones, as soon as the sun sets a bit or you step inside where there's a little less light, then even the main camera will start to struggle. And unfortunately, using Nightscape doesn't really help much either. The ultra-wide lens is also not nearly as reliable as the main sensor. Even in fantastic conditions, you can really see a drop in image clarity and dynamic range when comparing the images to the ones taken with the main lens. But look, I'll always prefer having a slightly subpar ultra-wide lens than nothing at all. What I would prefer they left out though is this 2 megapixel monochrome sensor. OnePlus, this thing is useless and you know it. So get rid of it. And so would I recommend this phone? Yes, but that all depends on the price of it where you live. See, here in Australia, it actually sits right between the Nord CE and the regular OnePlus 9 in terms of price. And it's actually close enough to the price of the OnePlus 9 that I'd personally suggest spending a little more and picking up that phone instead. The Nord CE is also a decent bit cheaper as well, and you don't lose out on much compared to the Nord 2, except perhaps in the build and design department. But price aside, either way, I do really like this phone. It feels surprisingly close in nearly every way to OnePlus's much more expensive devices, and that is a win in my books. Let me know what you think about the OnePlus Nord 2 down in the comments below, and if you're interested in seeing what I think OnePlus needs to change to improve their entire phone lineup going forward, then I'll leave a link to a video I made on that exact topic up in the cards and down in the description below. Aside from that, that's it. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will catch you later.